It's about 4 o'clock. Let's go ahead and call the Thursday, July the 14th, Capital Investments Committee meeting to order. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes of June the 9th, 2011. I would assume everyone's had a chance to read those things. Any additions, deletions?
I would move that we approve the minutes of June 9th.
Second.
Proper motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Item 3, discussion concerning the Hillsborough Road property acquisitions. Mr. Parker, you're up.
Well, I'm going to pull Paul up too.
Yeah, Paul's up then.
And maybe William may need to come up, I don't know. There's been discussions, of course, about the properties that we're talking about purchasing along Fifth Avenue North or Hillsborough Road. As you're well aware, we've already purchased one. We looked at purchasing another and decided not to do that. And then we have 2 other properties, and the 302 and 310 that were part of the resolution that the board said they wanted to purchase outright instead of doing easements or right-of-way. There's been some discussion as to whether or not we still want to do that. The property owners, I think, are actually, some of them are here, may want to address the issue. But that's what this is back on the agenda for, is to go through and look at that, and if you want to listen, hear from the property owners, hear what they have to say concerning it, and then we can either leave it as is, change what we're going to do, or whatever. So, Paul, do we need to add anything else?
But is the discussion just specifically on the 331 Fifth Avenue North property?
I would actually say we need to have a decision on
Well, the intent was not to just have discussion on that one, because we need to talk about we need to get final resolution on what we want to do with the others since this has come up. But that's what was written up. That's really the only thing we had to be able to write up something, was the 331. So.
And I guess I'd say if there's no direction to change the direction given in your 2009 resolution related to the project, we're going to continue on proceeding with the acquisitions as was directed there. The 331 Fifth Avenue North property is one that came up later as a discussion item. We would say at a minimum, let's get the direction to acquire the property needed for the project and move that on, knowing that if you'd like to pursue the rest of the property, that could also be looked at. But in interest of the Hillsborough Road project, to get us that direction, and if there's any desire to change the previous direction, let us know.
All right, I have a question about 331. First of all, what could be done with what was left? If we just took the right-of-way, what could be done with the rest of the property?
Well, it can be used as a retail, and the appraisal said didn't think it'd be able to go back in as a service station, but I'm not real sure about that even. If they went in and did the underground tanks or did the tanks as before and approved by TDEC and all that, I don't know why they couldn't. I don't know, and Gary's not here. I don't know if there's would be a codes issue concerning the fact that they have moved out, but it hasn't been torn down. So I think it could still be used, but it could be used as a retail. I know Ben Worley, who is our right-of-way acquisition agent, has been discussing possibilities of a relocation from across the street should we buy that. So there's several things that could be done.
All right, let me just ask the property owner, how would,
Come up, please.
could that possibly be used again as a service station? Would you all put those tanks back in there?
No, ma'am. We probably would not. It's my understanding that it could be done again, but it's quite costly
Okay.
to do that.
All right, we have down an option to acquire the right-of-way and at a later date, maybe, a later date for $189,000
That would be, yeah, that'd be if you acquired the balance of the property.
Yeah.
The right-of-way
To-
itself is about 55.
to acquire it at a later time. Do you all understand that? Have you talked about
I
that?
haven't talked to anybody about that. I mean, we agreed to sell the property to the city as a whole. And then the last meeting that I attended, there was some discussion based on, everybody kind of wanted to wait to see what the appraisal for
Yeah.
the right-of-way, et cetera, came in at to make that decision. And that's kind of where it was left. And then I talked to Ben, and he told me what the appraised amount was,
So you're talking about the right-of-way,
the right-of-way.
and you agreed to that? You
Well,
agreed
I
to-
made a little counter
Oh, no,
offer.
no, no, I'm sorry, the counter, okay. All right. But if at a later time, the city wanted to take that off your hands, would you be willing for us to do that
If we.
for the
had-
remainder of
for the
from what,
remainder of
the
amount.
245,000 minus the 55,800?
Yes, ma'am. But I can't afford to drag it out another
Well,
year.
yeah, I understand that, But we're sort of talking about what we can do right now,
Yes, ma'am.
right this minute.
And what would be our reasoning right now not to go ahead and...
And buy the whole thing.
Buy the whole thing, and that's, I think, my
Or
last...
make the offer for the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Make the offer for the
Yeah.
whole
Yep.
thing.
And-
It
and-
suit me fine.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I am right now as I look along this stretch here, what other things we have to do. And just want to make sure, from a city standpoint, what I think I'm hearing is that there's opportunities here for the city to do other things with it. Yes or no?
Well, if we acquire the whole property, as I mentioned before, the recommendation is going to be that we do demolish all structures, take up
They're up.
take up the
Tanks
asphalt
are
for the
up.
most
Yeah.
part. Tanks are gone, yes. Look at this as trailhead, as entrance features to the Mount Hope, is that a historic area? Whatever, I think it's a historic area.
Yes, as
But yeah,
we-
make an entrance feature like we got in other areas around the city, and use it, like I said, as a trailhead parking, and just probably more intensive landscaping
Well, I
than
would
what's
really
already
like to
set
see
up
that
for
happen.
street
Yeah,
sweep
I
parking.
think that would be my recommendation moving forward, and move this to the whole board, but to look at acquiring the whole property.
Thank you.
Any comments from Mike, Ann, Bill?
Well, my concern is that, I guess this is on. My concern again, though, is that we had planned this as a part of a fairly expensive project anyway, and that what we needed was the 50,000 or the counteroffer of 55,000. And I'm not sure I understand where Trailhead would be. I think the trails are on the other side, are they not?
There is a proposed trail to be constructed at some part in your Greenway plans along Sharps Branch, which is right at the back of that property. We have a sewer easement, sewer that goes along Sharps Branch, and there's proposal to build a trail down through there also. So that would be like a trailhead for that trail heading up Sharps Branch all the way over to 96 and et cetera.
But the main trails for the properties that we're talking about bidding are on the other side of the street,
The
right?
trails for the Third Avenue extension and all are on the other side, yes, yes. Of course, this would eventually connect to it. But that's long-range stuff. That's long-range.
That has not been proposed.
What's that?
That has not been proposed in any.
The trail?
And that we have.
It's just in
Greenway
the
plan.
planning stage. It is nothing has been looked at as far as funding or budgeting.
So Eric, what is your, I guess, I'm going to ask, what is your recommendation on this particular item? We came to us before, it was, I think, $310,000. It came to us as a tax assessed value of $245,000. I think that was what the board looked at to see the $55,000 or $60,000 difference between what we were offering and what the appraisal value was from a tax point. This is at least one appraised tax point, $245,000.
I think that there's been a more recent one now with the reassessment. I don't remember that number, but
Well, they reassessed it.
I think it's higher. But
They reassessed it at 390 plus thousand, and then I negotiated that back down to 310, based on the most recent appraisal.
So I think as you look at it, you absolutely need to do the piece, move the forward with the piece that gets the project we need for the project. That's absolutely, I think, appropriate to do here. For $189,000, you can acquire the whole property and control that and see. Yeah, I think it's based on how likely you think it is to be a good redevelopment site in private hands versus your ability to make it an entrance way into the Mount Hope neighborhood and provide this other access that David described. I mean, that's the opportunity that you may not have a few years from now if you don't do that. So it is a unique opportunity. If you're interested in doing it, this is the time to do it. It would be appropriate to move forward at this time if that's of value to you.
The staff recommendation, though, is to purchase
Just the right
the right-of-way.
The right-of-way, and then if you'd like us to advance the other piece, we'll pursue that. But we absolutely need that piece to move forward with the project. That's the first priority.
Well, staff's recommendation originally was to buy the entire piece of property.
Right, and you've now
At
brought that price down.
At
and this is
$310,000.
I guess I'd say this is, if you're gonna do it, this is a good opportunity to do it, if you think that's
Mayor?
of value to you.
I had a question to Mr. Parker. If we acquire the entire property, does that change any of the requirements for some of the streetscape elements that would be on that property?
It doesn't change the requirements, but we would probably want to go in and change some of that well, it does change requirements, because initially we could take out all the parking, you wouldn't have to do walls and things like that, so you could save some money, but I think you'd want to do more landscaping as a minimum.
You'd want to provide
'Cause
some
we'd
kind of
be-
entryway into the neighborhood if you're gonna.
Right, we'd have some wall, but we wouldn't have, you have walls to hide any parking in our streetscape, so some of that wall would come out, if
So there might-
I understand it correctly.
So there could be a trade-off.
There's
some cost.
there will be some cost, could be some cost savings to the streetscape portion of Hillsborough Road, yes.
To be clear, not $180,000
No,
worth.
probably
but
not.
some.
Fellow committee members, what is your desire?
As I previously stated, I'm looking ahead, and I think there's great opportunities for us to go ahead and purchase the whole spot. Look at what can happen from an economic development standpoint down the road, and that's where I'm coming from. Strictly, I'm not looking at today. I'm looking at down the road.
Are you making a motion?
You can make a motion
Are
to
we-
recommend to the full
are we
board or to a
making it,
workshop
right.
at some point in time, this item, yeah.
Yeah, I would recommend that we present to the full board the opportunity to purchase the entire parcel.
And I'll second that.
In the amount of $245,000. Proper motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Now, would you like us, typically when we get a 3-0 vote like this or a 4-0 vote like this at a committee, we put it on a consent agenda at the next board meeting, but then there are other times you direct us to have a discussion at the work session or that sort of thing, or at least put it on new business.
Yeah, based on
What
new
would you
business.
prefer, especially since we have most everybody
New
here?
business,
What?
I do not want to see it on the consent agenda.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to have a work session discussion, or do you want us to just put it on new business?
Put it on new business.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, we'll do it. Now, there's the other aspect of the other properties. Anybody wants to make a motion?
Little different discussion on
Yeah.
that insofar as I have not even, I really haven't thought about the other 2 or 3 properties that much. I was looking at this one, and this one came up, this one was the trailhead entrance. This was an issue that we've been dragging around now for several months. I don't have a, well, is there an even
I
an
have
offer on that?
I would like to move that we recommend to the board that we accept option one and require those two properties, because there's going to be a cost to the city if we have to redesign what we've already got designed. You say revisions to the design would need to occur.
Correct.
And so I move that we recommend to the board that we go on with it as planned.
Well,
And you've already given that, the board's already given that direction, so we're just coming back to you
why is it on here?
because it's been brought up
Because it's been
before.
discussed, and there was some.
What do you need from us?
We were directed to go back and talk to property owners, et cetera.
Okay.
Because of assessment or because of?
We don't even have the appraisals back for those properties yet. We pushed forward early, as quick as we could, the 331 appraisal, but we don't have the appraisals back for the other two.
Okay, well, that was all agreed before I got on the board, so
The only thing I'd like to add is a property owner at 302 has requested to remain, and that's another issue
Yeah.
that they brought it up, so I just want to make sure.
But that means that there would be a cost to the city to redesign that area.
How can they do that if we take the right-of-way? How can 302 stay there if we take the right-of-way?
That's the
part of
ones
the
from
problem.
the park on that green space.
Are those owners?
Anyone from 302?
I would like to hear from.
There is
the
from
owner.
310.
Is there a
The beauty shop,
310 owner? Could you come up and let us?
310's here, but 302 I don't see.
Just want to give me a little brief where you are and what you're thinking.
I'm not the owner, it's my mom.
you're Mary Helen.
Yeah, that's Mary Helen. I'm just here talking to her. She's unable to make it, so I'm just here talking to her.
What do you all want to say?
Yeah, well, what the problem is we're in the concrete business, statuary, which is not an inside business, it's an outside business, and you have to have display area on the outside. And when they widen the road up, it's gonna take the road up against the building, and we're not gonna have any display area. So that's the problem with our place.
So you would not be able to continue your present business there?
That's true,
Okay.
yes.
All right. And that helps me a whole lot, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
I like your shop.
Oh, thank you.
I hadn't seen.
I don't really know what we're supposed to be doing here
If
with this property.
no action, we
You
can.
don't,
Okay.
no action keeps us on the path that was directed
But we
previously.
can't change the action if we don't discuss it. So we've discussed it, you're taking no action, we continue on.
Okay,
Correct.
All right?
thank you very much.
Check in a couple.
Item 4, consideration of the final change order for the demolition and debris removal of structure at 306 Fifth Avenue North.
What is left to be moved?
Well, it's all done. This is trying to get all the final payments, et cetera, done. It's
Move approval.
Second.
Proper motion is second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. That's to go to the full board. Item 5, consideration of the final change order for the demolition and debris removal of the Rebel Meadows property.
It's similar, same thing. We had some extra costs, mainly from having to remove a tree that fell.
That much extra?
All right,
Oh, that's the
we're
final.
not going to remove those large trees right now that are left.
What's out there now stays until or unless the McCatcher Construction gets it.
Move approval.
Second.
Proper motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Item 6, consideration of the agreement, City of Franklin contract number 2011-0091 between the City of Franklin and various Circle Partners LLC for water and sanitary sewer improvement.
I think Mr. Girth has an updated version of what we're discussing on this. We had a meeting a while ago, actually.
Good evening. Yeah, I think I do. first thing I wanted to do this evening, and I don't know if many of you have had the opportunity to meet Mickey Dobson. He's the newest addition to our engineering department. There's some coming around.
Welcome aboard, Mickey.
And I had asked Mickey to, there should be some more. I think you have,
I have one, now this is something else.
oh. This was
You need that?
a request by Ashlyn Hines and her partner. Many of you may know Ashlyn. And they had purchased the 4 lots at the end of Berry Circle cul-de-sac that aren't shown on this aerial, but they are already platted. And her and her partner had interest in building their own personal homes on that rear parcel, so they have an offer to purchase that house that faces Lewisburg and are going to subdivide that to create 2 additional lots in the back. When this came in, the proposed plat for those rear 2 lots, Mark Hilty and Andy King came to me and said, you know, there may be an opportunity here to improve the infrastructure in this neighborhood. The water pressures aren't as best as they could, and ideally what the plan would be in longer term to make that upgrade is to loop the water that's currently in Lewisburg through the cul-de-sac, back behind O'More College, and over to 4th Avenue. And when they approached me with that, I said, okay, well, let's sit down and talk with Ashlyn and her partner and see if they, you know, would help us accomplish that. So what we've come to in an agreement in principle and are working on the written agreement that we want to present to you at the next board meeting is that to upgrade and really replace the 2 existing lines, the sewer and water line. The sewer line is in green, and it's an old clay line that needs to be replaced, and Mark has that budgeted as a capital improvement already. And the water line, that if we are going to make that loop and enhance the infrastructure for the water, to increase the size of that. And what we wanted Ashlyn and her partner to do is to grant us an easement, which they've agreed to do, and that's that orange hatched area there off one of the lots in the cul-de-sac, and contribute to the upgrade of the water line a little over $9,700, which they've agreed to do. And she also asked if we could get this done by December, that they would contribute another $10,000 just to help us move that along, which we thought was very generous. So I talked with Mark and his team, and believe that, you know, this is really just a replacement of what's already there. And we wanted to share that with you because that's a really cooperative way to improve our existing infrastructure. And again, Mark has monies in his budget for replacement of lines, and all we're really doing is moving it up in the schedule to get it completed and to help facilitate some development and future improvement of some infrastructure. So the agreement will be forthcoming to you at the next board meeting. We're finalizing that language as we speak.
Are they considering developing any of this down through here? Is that what that's for?
Well, actually, I want to emphasize that the existing sewer and water line serve the area, and there's people connected onto it. The 4 lots in this area are already platted, even though they're vacant, and those are eventually built upon. Ashlyn and her partner want to build homes on the back parcel that a plat will be coming to the Planning Commission at the next meeting.
You said something about a house on facing Lewisburg. What are you talking about?
This home here is the property that they're planning to purchase, in which to create 2 lots at the back, in the back of it.
So they want to develop all that vacant land back there.
Yeah. Oh, they have it on the
Look on the
back?
next page.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. You can see the plat on the back. I'm sorry, I didn't. I'm sorry, if you look on the next page. That explains it better.
So a total of 6 there, those 4 up top near the
Right.
curly Q.
The four are already there, they're just gonna adjust the lines and put an easement into between.
Do you have the easement to go through O'More to go over to Fourth?
Not at this time.
That'll be
The
something.
looping of the line will be something that we'll work on at a different time. But at least we're getting a contribution to do a portion of the work, plus get the easement to get us going towards Fourth Avenue.
Okay, so we're really talking about a rather extensive development for that area. If you've got 4 lots up there on Dairy Circle, and then you're gonna add 2 more, that's gonna be pretty intense back there.
How much acreage is around each of those?
That's behind the Rice property.
Yes, and again, the 4 lots are already existing, though they're vacant. They've been there for years.
There'll be a road through there.
There'll be a driveway, a private drive to those 2 houses.
So you're adding.
So the lots are already there.
The 4 lots are there, the 2.
So 14, 13, 12, and 11 are already there.
Already there,
14, 12, 13, they're already there.
right,
2 and 3 is where they're wanting to build on.
correct.
So the
Addition to the 13, 14, 13, 12, and 11.
Right. So there'd be 6 total lots in that area.
And the current water supply system will not furnish those other 2 lots?
Let's go back just a little bit. We're not looking to approve what's being built.
Right,
What you're asking for is the approval of the $9,776 and the additional $10,000 if we'll do the upgrades into that area before the end of December. Is that not what you're asking
There's a
for?
little bit more to it than that, though.
Okay, what's the
And
total cost?
because it says, if you look on that contract, on the number 5 says, in return for the payments to be submitted, that the city, even if the city delays, there will not be a withholding of building permits, plan approval, or certificate of occupancy for the residences to be completed. The CO, I think, is the concern there. But that is a part of the contract. It's
Right.
not just that we're taking their money, and making the upgrade, but it states that we will give them a CO even though that's not done.
Well, wait a minute, we would give them a CO if we didn't have water and sewer back
no,
there?
No.
The water and sewer are already there, okay?
Right.
And
Some water and some sewer.
That's
Right. For all 6 houses, which aren't likely to be built and occupied before January, again, they're looking at those 2 initially, there is sufficient water, okay? And the sewer's already there. All we're saying is we're gonna upgrade that so that there's adequate potable water as well as for fire suppression in that line for all 6, and that helps us make the loop for the whole neighborhood. The sewer and water are already there.
Will be an upgrade
It'd be
for
an
that
upgrade.
area, and that's what we need to approve.
Are you reading this to say that if we accept the $9,700 and $10,000, that in itself obligates us to a CO? Because I don't read it that way.
If you
I
look at
don't.
number 5,
I don't
is that
read
what
it that way.
says?
I don't read it at all that way. In the event, the city shall be delayed in completing its scope of involvement past December the 1st, such delay shall not be a basis for withholding any building permit, plan approval, or certificate of occupancy. Nothing has been approved through the planning commission on this.
No.
So that's the approval process. The only
Actually,
thing that-
it'll go to the
We've
planning
already-
commission, and then this'll
Yeah,
be
yeah, I don't-
completed afterwards.
It's already been the planning commission once for the preliminary plat, hasn't it?
But they're coming back. It was pulled off the agenda.
Okay,
They're
okay.
bringing it back on now because we wanted to finalize this agreement. and
It sounds like something, good. As I say, the only thing that bothered me was the CO. I don't,
The only problem that
we've done that before on some things that I could name.
In
That
that
park?
In that case, though, you didn't have the sewer in. Here, we have the sewer and water, and...
Well, no, wait, they will have to put it to their lots.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
not-
they need to connect to the main, but the mains are already there. Again, I'm trying to bring this up as, we run into this type of situation from time to time when there's redevelopment within our existing parts of our community that are more mature that need upgrades. This is an example of where a developer wants to contribute some funds in which we definitely need to make upgrades just for the existing neighborhood and to help facilitate their desire to build homes here that they can do already on 4 of the lots. They've made a willingness to make a contribution of close to $20,000.
Mr. Chairman, we have done that over in the Granbury area when we were looking at the Boys and Girls Club coming there, the Habitat for Humanity home improvements in that area. We went in there, we upgraded the water pressure, pipes, sewage, etc. And of course, it ended up being a great project.
And it was. In that case, we didn't get an added contribution.
Right, there was
but in
no-
this case, we are.
Mr. Chairman,
Mayor?
I can confess to having lived on Berry Circle with my wife for several years, and the water is a big problem up there. It's a dead-end line, and periodically the water department would come and flush out the line, but because it got so much stuff in it, and many times it's on a regular basis, and sometimes we had to call. So I think this is a great upgrade for that area, and it's if you haven't been up there, it's an absolutely beautiful area, Frank.
I've been up there.
Yeah. And I'm glad Mayor Moore brought that up, because one of the things that we've noticed in here is that historically the city didn't design a system with loop lines, and there are many dead-end lines. What we want to do when somebody comes in and wants to do something, that we want to try to complete a loop line. It provides redundancy, quality, and better pressures. And again, this is another reason why we wanted to share it with you.
So do we
Need a motion?
I have another question. What's the total cost of the project to the city for the?
I didn't bring those numbers. Do you remember those?
No.
Okay, but it's for both replacing the existing lines, both of them is under $100,000.
Is it in this?
No, we
got?
didn't include that.
Do you know Mark may know?
You remember?
If I remember correctly, somewhere in the mid-30s.
Yeah.
That's inclusive of labor, materials, equipment. We intend on doing the work in-house. So obviously, we're paying for labor and equipment already. So I think the outlay in terms of cash would be for materials only. I don't have that number, unfortunately.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that we...
One question.
One more question.
I just have one more question. This is the water line easement, but we're not talking about doing the loop, right? Because would that have to go on the Moore property? Is that what the...
Not yet. The design would have to accommodate a future extension of that
Yeah.
line. So we would terminate the line in a fire hydrant with probably some valving that would allow us to take off from that termination through Elmore and down to Fourth. There's, again, down in that area, there's a dead-end line through there that we've been looking at for a period of time.
But we do not have the easements to complete the loop.
No.
Even based
That's
on,
a
even on this.
future additional
That's right, but
future
what I'm saying is, this just gives us the opportunity on this property, but it does not give us the opportunity to complete the loop. Thank you.
So for $60,000, of which 20 would be by the developer, we can go back in and fix a problem on Berry Circle of both water and sewer.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, my understanding, we had a meeting late this afternoon, and we've got some rewrite going on with the agreement. I would ask that you look at this, that we need to get that completed, and we need the applicant or the other party to look at it and bring it back to you. We do not have it yet on the work session for your next meeting, but we need, I think, put it back on your work session and then go to the board, same night.
Actually,
I mean,
yeah, I'd like to put it on both.
we probably need to put it on both the work session and board, And the reason is we got to get this worked out, or we need to get this worked out before the planning commission meeting on the 28th, board meetings on the 26th, et cetera. So I would, you know, however you do your motion, I would ask that you carry it forward in that way. And we're, like I said, the language is still being worked on somewhat.
And work on item 5 so that Ann's issue, which
That's part of what's
is
being
part of it.
Yeah.
That needs to be cleared up, and that needs to be.
But to get this whole loop done, we've still got to go to the O'More property and down to 4th?
Yes.
Yep.
Correct.
And so that would
Pay
also.
for easement for that.
We'd have to pay for the easements then, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless, you know, again, we're setting ourselves up to do that. How Mark fits that in, his capital improvement plan is yet to be determined.
So are we paying them for the easement that's shown here?
No.
No, they're giving it too. So that's in addition to the monetary contribution.
Okay.
And let me just add, as Vernon mentioned, this won't be the last time you see some sort of discussions
down
like
here
this with
somewhere.
development within existing neighborhoods, off of existing older infrastructure, where we've got dead-end lines. We're looking at opportunities to complete loops and improve the system, not only for somebody who may want to develop, sort of do infill development, but also those existing customers that we're serving. So you're going to see some of these over the coming years as we look at opportunities to improve the system along with development.
Thank you.
So the motion
don't
should
need
be
enough.
to
If it's going to a workshop.
We probably, given the nature of this, it'd probably be best to put it on both meetings on the 26th.
All right.
But it's helpful to have the discussion with you all to understand where we are.
Find out.
Item 7, consideration of the amendment number 2 for the utility installation agreement with Mallory Valley Utility District, City of Franklin, contract number 2009-0039. Mr. Parker.
This is kind of a convoluted agreement, actually. Started out as a repaving for Mallory Station Road as they were doing the work. We then included into it as Amendment 1 the work for the Nickel Mill Lane for them to do the meter for Academy Sports. And what we're doing here is we've got, and now we're kind of including in this, that costs more money because of some infrastructure that was in place that we were unaware of. You correct me if I say something wrong. But we're also going to get a credit back because we're going to do some paving. So with saying all that, this would be the last amendment. It'll get this thing squared away as to how we're going to do this. It's actually the 2 projects, and we will be getting it finalized then. And it's a total, where was that?
Is it a net reduction from?
No, it's a net increase. What is the net? Oh, you got the wrong one. No wonder I can't see the numbers. It's a net increase of, what was it, net increase, Paul?
The net increase was $13,065,
Okay.
and that's a refund basically for the work that was not completed. And then there was the additional cost of the 70 linear feet of water line, which I don't have that exact number here. But adding it all together, it ends up costing us less overall.
Oh, it is less.
However, we may have that section of Nickel Mill that will need to be overlaid. We're going to take those funds hopefully down the road and work that into that contract at some point.
I know that's clear as mud.
Do you need a motion about that?
It's going to the board this week.
I so move.
That's a proper motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Whatever she said.
Item 8, consideration of the professional services agreement, COF contract number 2011-0093 with Standifer and Associates for property appraisal for the 3rd Avenue North improvements in an amount not to exceed $20,000.
This is, if you recall, we have run into a problem with TDOT approval of the 3rd Avenue due to the fact we have the STP funds included in it. They will not accept the fact that we own the property. We have to prove that we did it correctly as far as the Federal Uniform Relocation Act, which means we have to go back and do appraisals of properties, and the next item is a review appraisal. But we have to follow the act, and we get appraisals of it, and then we will have to talk with the property owners that we settled with that are in dispute possibly, and we may have to pay more money for the property to get TDOT approvals for the project and get certification of the property acquisitions. So that's what this is about. Total cost for this item and then the next item and plus title searches that we have to do is going to be just under $25,000 to go back and do all this. That's just to do the appraisals, title searches. It does not, if we have to pay more money for properties, does not include that. So that's where we're standing on this, but we will not be able to get certification of the project to go forward unless we do something like this.
We won't know the answer to the property question until we've done the appraisals.
That is correct.
To see if there's any
That's unfortunate.
difference there. It is, and it's the, I guess the nature of the input that TDOT has gotten from Federal Highway about making sure we're clean with the 1970 Uniform Relocation Act. That's kind of one of those hoops you've got to go through with the federal money.
To explain it a little bit, we bought the properties before we ever knew we were going to have federal funds in the project. So we bought the properties in the way we normally buy properties. We negotiated with the property owners and did the purchase. And that is not acceptable as far as the Federal Uniform Relocation Act. We have to go through the process, appraisal, reappraisal, review appraisal, et cetera. So that's where we are.
This is the curved part,
Yes.
3rd Avenue North. that's
Extension of
going
3rd Avenue. Mhm.
to Hillsborough, right?
Correct.
But this is going to be a city street, but we got federal money for...
There's federal funds involved with the trail system that's connected to.
This trail system thing that we approved the other day?
No,
How much?
that was a different grant.
This is the,
This is STP, about $800,000,
If
$600,000
we
to
have a
$800,000.
deed to the property, if we own the property,
The Federal Relocation Act was established to ensure that cities, federal government, et cetera, do not coerce people to sell for less than the actual value. So you have to jump through the hoops, and we cannot, or we haven't been able to prove that we didn't do that or we didn't follow it, so we have to go back and do it. Again, it's just something that,
it's retroactively going back and doing what you would have done if you had had federal money in hand when you bought that property.
Correct.
When we bought that property, some of them, it's close to 10 years ago, we didn't know that it would ultimately have a federal component in the project. So we didn't necessarily know to go through all those hoops. So now we have to go back retroactively and sort of recreate the documentation to show that the price paid was consistent with a fair value for the
how many
property.
property owners are we talking about?
We have 5 pieces of property that are involved in this review. They are letting us off the hook on properties that were purchased in the 1850s. Acquired by the city in the 1850s. So.
Well, based on that, Mr. Chairman, it seems like this is something we must do. So I move that we move forward and take this to
I
new bid.
begrudgingly second.
Proper motion and a second, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Item 9, consideration of the professional services agreement with John M. Hahn Jr. for property review appraisal for the 3rd Avenue North improvements in an amount not to exceed $2,500.
Same thing.
This is the review appraisals. We have to do appraisal and then we have to do a review.
Move approval.
Second.
Proper motion is second, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Item 11, street projects status report. Anything anyone wishes to pick out of there? And on the back.
I will yield the rest of the time to CIP discussion. Mr. Chair.
Anything new we want to highlight?
We did want to highlight the Mac Hatcher project in particular. Basically, the right-of-way, we just wanted to give the summary to the board that we have at this point finished all the work that staff can do in acquiring the right-of-way. There was a total of 45 properties. We have closed or have an agreement to close with 41 parcels, and 4 properties are going to have to go through condemnation. Other properties closed. There's 6 that have agreements. And essentially, all we're waiting for is mortgage companies and lenders to give us a partial release on them to do the final closure. So we just wanted to highlight that that was essentially done at the staff level.
Great, good job.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. Only
That's right.
we moving forward.
We're making progress.
Oh, wait, TDOT said we didn't have this finished.
It's not finished yet.
Not yet, but soon we'll be able to.
Let's go back then to item 10, CIP discussion.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, this is just a follow-up from some board discussion a couple weeks ago that we had about the CIP and the priorities, and there's been prioritization done by board members. There's been a staff proposal of a CIP package to move forward with. And the sense from that discussion is that the board wanted to just have a little more review and discussion time generally, and that's what this provides. We've got the documents that have been provided previously about the projects. We'd be glad to review any specifics about projects if you'd like, or discuss any matters related to CIP. Ultimately, what I'd expect we would do is hone in on at least a group of projects you'd like to see us look at, and we continue to wait for the opportunity when all the data is available to update things related to our debt policy and capacity modeling, and we can essentially apply groups of priorities to those like we did last time and see how they come out and help facilitate decision not only on priorities but on an updated funding plan if you'd like to add specific projects to our funding plan.
And to make sure everybody's working off the same CIP summary, it'd be the one that has the 7/11/2011 date at the top. And it also has right under the title, sorry to have to say this, Ms. Peterson, the following calculated priority ranking is after correction on Ann Peterson's ranking.
So
Let me
called
tell you,
her
what
out.
I did was, I did what you all were going to do.
did your work
But I
for you.
did it first.
She assigned values.
I did, I assigned value.
Typical school
Not
district.
allow you to do that.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, the
Does
mathematician
everybody
in
have
me,
one?
I thought this is the way it
Exactly.
needed
Got
to
an
be
extra
done.
review.
And this is what we have projected, so this is what's up on the board.
Let's
So-
just go to the second page.
Yours doesn't show.
The one on the board says 712, but is it the same thing as it doesn't matter when we printed it?
Go to the second page. It's probably just a matter of when we printed it.
Page 2.
Yeah.
Well,
second.
no-
Sure looks the same.
Well, let me
Yep,
tell
that's
you,
it.
number
That's it.
one on this new one is the Eastern Flank
Right,
Battlefield. I can tell you.
that's it, so, that's it.
One of the items on Eastern Flank, let me just say, we plan to bring forward to you as staff at the 26th a contract for the design services. We think that's somewhere around $25,000 to $30,000 worth of design work. We'd like to at least get that moving so that we know what we're dealing with from a design standpoint, that also allow us to refine cost estimates, et cetera. So I think that would be an appropriate step at this point.
Actually, I think it's 24/3.
24/3?
I wrote the PSA today.
Battlefield Commission this morning also said if we could look at kind of if I can bring in 2 or 3 people to look, to get just the minutest detail on this before we send it to the people that are going to do the final design. Can we do that next week?
Or that can be integrated as part of the design
Yeah.
process, too. We can-
I guess my question is, do we need that before you would send it to the,
Well, we've got,
First.
you won't be approving the contract till the 9th of August. So we've got time, plus probably
Okay.
if we're going to have somebody come in, we'd have our designers at any meeting such as that, but we need to get them on board.
okay, good.
So
I
that
mean,
could
we'll be sending
early
it
in
to
the
them,
contract
but I
period
mean,
or
it's
between.
like, just
Okay.
do it at the very first, a kickoff meeting or something, whatever you want
Okay.
to call it.
All right, what do we need to do to get that moving after the design's done?
The eastern flank, then it's having it budgeted for construction, which, remember, we have $369,000 budgeted now. With your prioritization here, we're looking at adding the monies that would be
Good.
able to do the construction of the access road, full loop.
Uh-huh,
So
that's about.
that would be,
the 5.
basically what we're talking about is we go through the CIP, as Mr. Stuckey said, we've got to look at what's going to be recommended and approved for funding out of your prioritization. We will be coming with, after we get some input from you of what you want to do, et cetera, we will be coming back to you with a resolution that approves the funding based on what you say you want to do. Just like we did a year or so ago with both the CIP and the stormwater CIP.
Isn't that why we're here today, to do this?
Well, today, if you're ready to do it today, yes, but for you to look at what your total calculated priorities are, you to do, listen to you, explain to you whatever you need to as far as any project. We're for you right now. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to get accomplished today.
A great deal.
Just to provide an opportunity for discussion.
I
Discussion.
hope that's why we're here.
Well, when do I say some things?
Anytime you'd like to.
Okay, I think now is the time to look at the page that they just handed out to you, but it's a page that I put together. It's the general fund history, and it shows the first column and the third column come out of our 2010 audit. Those numbers are strictly from, they come from the audit. My purpose in showing this, though, is to show you from 2001 to 2010 what's happened to the bonded indebtedness of the city. These are general obligations. They're not including water and sewer, the enterprise funds there. If you notice, from 2001, in fact up until 2004, our bonded debt was about $20 million. At the end of fiscal year 2010, our bonded indebtedness was up to $122 million, and since then, we have issued bonds for $16 million more. And they don't show on here just because I had the audit from a year ago, And again, over on the extreme right, the per capita debt, again, this comes directly from the audit. It's not anything that I did. It shows that, our general, in the general fund, our debt is over $2,000 per person, per capita, based on our population that we knew back in fiscal year 2010. I know that we have just mentioned something about our debt capacity. If you look back at even the most recent debt capacity, and including the one that shows up as a part of kind of an appendix in our 2012 budget that we've just passed, it showed our debt was around, I don't know, it looked like to me $1,100, just guessing. That hasn't been true for the last 2 years. And one of our guidelines there was that the per capita debt would be under $2,000. If you recall from that other debt capacity, one of the other big things was that the amount of debt service we're actually paying is well beyond what our debt capacity policy stated. And we knew some of that whenever we were planning to spend the money that we had talked about, I guess, in 2009. However, in our discussions, in talking about how much money we had kind of saved from, lower bids and things like that, one of the other things that was shown on there, though, was that back in 2009, when we talked about this, we also said we would take $5 million, we would draw $5 million from the fund balance. Well, now, in the last 4 years, our fund balance is down more than 20%. And I do not think at this point that drawing $5 million out of that is a good idea. $5 million more out of it. And so my point in bringing this up was to say that based on what we have already authorized the staff to go through, you know, we're talking about, you know, we haven't borrowed the money for all of the projects that we have back in 2009 agreed to. Now, we have borrowed some of the money. If you look back on the first page of the priority rankings, when it talks about this would just be the material that the city had out, you know, put out along with the priority rankings there. We have borrowed some of that money for Hillsborough, but we haven't borrowed, I would say, even half of it yet. So those amounts that you see in fiscal year 2012 and 2013, I don't know how much money out of that we have already borrowed. So in other words, based on the projects that we've already said that we wanted to do, we're still talking about additional borrowing. And, you know, in my opinion, probably what I'm seeing, I would think the only thing that we would want to add would be the Eastern Flank Battlefield, because it's not going to cost us very much. Even though there are other priorities here, whenever you look at the amounts of money that would be added to our general fund debt, it seems to me we've gone way beyond what our policy stated and what, as a city, we can afford to do. Because I want to tell you, you're going to pay that debt service even if you have to reduce your other expenditures. I just saw something in the Wall Street Journal yesterday or the day before talking about a city that, well, the city of Cincinnati, and they are paying now 20 or 30% of their revenues in debt service. I mean, we're not doing anything like that, but we don't. But I mean, we're doing, I don't know how much, what our debt service is. I guess I could look in the budget, but that also would put us beyond what our policy stated.
Which is what, 20%?
I think it's, well, I can look at it.
What's our policy, 20 to 30?
Our policy stated that
That was 20
In terms of debt service?
In terms of
it's
debt
less
service.
than-
of our, has to be 20%
It's
or
based
more.
on, it's based on the
Can't be less
the
than.
benchmarks of the AAAs. You'd have to look at the exact number, but it's not anywhere near that high.
No, but it is, but our debt service that we're going to have to pay in 2012 is higher than our benchmark,
As a percentage of the general fund.
Exactly.
Which is in part a function of the reductions we've made in the general fund over
Right.
the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And I guess I would comment a little bit on this, just to say, you've built a debt policy that has many facets to it. Multiple measures of good fiscal judgment and decision-making. It's not just one benchmark or a couple benchmarks. It's a group of them that you look at collectively. And what I would suggest that we do, just like we did last time, is we work through the projects that are of interest to you, and we apply that to that funding scenario. There are a number of things that have happened, as we pointed out in previous meetings, that work in our favor in terms of projects we didn't do. Reduced cost in borrowing from what we anticipated, other savings that we realized in bidding projects that came in under. And I would urge you to take all of those and look at the financial capacity related to that, and then look at all those measures. Hopefully soon we'll have those AAA benchmarks that will help us gauge those various measures, because they're all largely founded upon what those benchmarks tell us where other AAA cities are, and being on the positive side of that group of AAAs, even though we're in a unique situation where we're a AAA-rated city that's also facing pretty dynamic growth pressures. So we've got to continue to invest in infrastructure to be ready to handle growth, or handle growth that has come and be ready to handle growth that we can reasonably expect to come, so that we continue to thrive as a community. So those are all, it is a balancing act of looking at all of those. And so what I would urge you to do is what you did last time, which is continue to move through what projects you think are important for the community, and have us weigh that with what the financial capacity is and how this rolls through the policies you've set and the funding model that we've put in place, and kind of take all those factors and look at where these various measures come out, and make a judgment call based on that in terms of what you want to do and what you feel comfortable and feel that you can afford to do.
Well, since we've done this last thing, why couldn't we take 1, 2, and 3 and let you do whatever it is you want to do with them? We've done this and done it and done it, and here it is, 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
So I would suggest that we take those top 3, and start there and do what you suggest in order to get them going.
Well, let's at least get the numbers that, we haven't had an update, a corrected update on the debt capacity. And so I think what the discussion would be to present to us each of the scenarios the way that we did before.
Yeah, there was some update done a year ago, but there's still additional information related to that. And some of the information we don't have to be able to do the update in terms of having most current AAA medians to compare ourselves against. Those we think are forthcoming at any time, but they're not out yet. We can work with the best information we have, and hopefully that more current information also comes through to give us a better set of data for you to look at in terms of where our policy comes out. So we can absolutely do that with those 3. We can do that with any group of projects you'd like us to look at. That's what we did last time. We think we had somewhere around 7 or 8 scenarios ultimately that we looked at. I don't know if we want that many, but we did. We have the ability to do that and add and subtract projects and pretty dynamically work with it and show you the impact of those projects.
Mr. Chairman, I think with the top, not only the top 3, I would love to add the top 4. Let's look at the fire station there. Now, the other thing I want to comment on is that of these top 4 that we're looking at, staff had recommended 3 of them. So that let me know that we all sort of on the same page here.
And the only reason number 1 wasn't in is we looked at it as a funded project at the time we did our package,
Right.
just because,
So
and there were we were waiting on grants and other things going on, so.
And if the grants come in, fine, but I don't think we need to wait for the grants. I think we need to go on and count that as number 1, and then we will have done our part, and if the grants come, then that's icing on the cake.
Well, the fire station there in West Haven, that's why I wanted to
Yeah.
kind of push
Okay,
that,
that's
because
good.
that development is
That's fine.
is out there, it's grown, it's big, it's huge, and we need to.
One of the aspects on that, when we looked at it from staff, we looked at it as completing the design at this point. And a number of these projects, we said, let's take the next step on. Let's maybe not go all the way with the funding of the project as well when we look at the model, just because, yeah, let's take it a step at a time or be ready for the next step. And maybe, so, I'm not sure when you prioritized it, how you looked at it. If you
Yeah.
looked at it the way we did, which is let's,
Move
from
it.
the staff side, let's take the
Do
next
what
step
you
and do
can.
design,
Do what you
because we felt that was appropriate, or do you want us to consider construction funding another year out?
Well,
Thinking
that's
out
one of
some
those
areas.
areas where the need is already there, as opposed to some other areas where the need for the project is not necessarily already there.
The scenario definitely need to show that.
We could do
Well,
both,
the need
too.
is, are you talking for the first 3 projects?
Well, may I
First
say
3
something?
projects, the needs are there. I mean,
Oh,
what are you
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about? The
yeah.
needs are.
Wait, could I
On-
say
on
something?
the
You're saying the
picture.
need is there. However, I want to
I'm
tell
asking-
you, if you look, and I'm sorry to point this one out, on South Carruthers, if you look at the traffic out there right now, it's less than 3,000 vehicles a day.
Well, that's not the only issue.
Well, I'm just saying, you're saying the need is already there.
Well-
My point is, as opposed to
Well,
West Haven, where the fire station is definitely needed,
Well-
the need is already there.
Yeah.
The other may be in Prospect, but the need is there for the West Haven
I
fire
guess
station.
I guess it's how we define need, because, you know, and I don't argue with the fact that the fire station's needed, definitely is. Just like McEwen 4, the need's already there. When you look at Carruthers, the need has actually been driven by a desire to do development down there. Well, first of all, it's driven by, we need another road down that area, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's no discussion in my thinking that is definitely needed. And then on top of that, we've got development happening in that area that would like to happen. And in this economy, if you've got people that have the ability to make that happen, those are the things we've been lacking in our city, or as our impact fees and things, because development's not happening. So how, when we know we have to, we need that road for various reasons, and then on top of it, we have the opportunity to make development to allow, you know, in that area, to allow that development to happen. That brings in revenue to the city, and then more property taxes as well, and of course, more fees from our developing community. So those things I look at, and I think, you know, I think it's really important that every time we take a look at these, that we look and say, in the long run, or in the short term as well, and then in the long term, how that brings in revenue to the city and continues to keep us viable and healthy. So I take a look at that with different scenarios of need in that area.
Mayor Moore?
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple of comments. The first one would be in reference to picking the first three projects. I think probably we should task staff with ranking or studying a funding plan for as many of these as we can, rather than just narrowing them down and saying, well, you just figure out how to fund 3. Maybe there's 5
That
that are
would be
possible.
wonderful.
But, you know, we are a growing city, and the projection is that we're going to continue to grow. I think they're saying 1,000 new school kids coming in this year. And of course, we don't have anything to do with schools, but they're bringing parents with them, I hope. So there's lots of demands, and I'd like to maybe go to a few comments about Alderman Peterson's concern, and certainly the numbers do reflect that our debt has increased and our fund balance has gone down. I can't disagree with that, but I think that also you have to look at the projects that we have been able to complete, and projects that are very important for a thriving, growing community, that we could have kept the indebtedness down, but we would have had a lot more problems than we're facing now. So I think that we have gotten a lot of things. The article that Alderman Peterson referred to was about Cincinnati, and the reason they're in a problem is that they built 2 great sports stadiums that are more expensive than any sports stadiums in the entire NFL or even the National Baseball League. So
Let me just state that those leases negotiated before I ever got there.
And Eric assured me that he was not interested in an NFL team here in Franklin.
No.
But we do have, you know, another thing is, remember, we have been reconfirmed as a AAA city. So, you know, those rating agencies are looking at us and understanding those things also. And I'm eager to get PFM to provide us with these new medians for people we're comparable to and what those are, and move forward. But we've got a lot of bang for the buck with this indebtedness, and I think that we have made things much better for our citizens going forward.
Well,
So I think that's...
Top 5?
I was going to say, you know, I think one of the things that our citizens have been very concerned about have been roads, but I think we have so much that we need to be doing for existing people who live here. And that's what has lagged behind. You know, we've had some road projects, but basically they did not add anything to traffic capacity. So I think, well, what about Columbia Avenue, for example?
What about Royal Oaks?
What about,
Let me tell you, Royal Oaks and North Carruthers are the two that did add traffic capacity.
sure did.
But for the rest of them, Boyd Mill, Del Rio,
Del Rio?
Columbia Avenue, we spent a lot of money on all of those. And in fact, we're talking about Third Avenue, the Third Avenue North. How much is that going to cost? $3 or $4 million? Is that going to really add to the traffic capacity? No.
Oh, it might not add to the traffic capacity on Columbia, but
It'll add
sure,
to the
sure has, yeah, the movement of traffic out there is like totally improved from
Columbia
that up to.
Avenue?
I drive that almost every other day, if not every day. And it
Well,
moves, I'm on that Columbia Avenue
Please.
today. I was on it four times today.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I was just saying, it takes me no time to get up to the library. And, you know, and I was
Not
down
traveling the
there
same
early
time I
morning.
am.
Well, I am glad to report that the traffic signal
That
synchronization on Murfreesboro Road now works fine for me.
It does.
I can go through all of them, so.
That's right. Hey, I would have to say, that didn't do anything to do with the traffic capacity, but it sure did help the movement of traffic. I appreciate that.
One of the things, you know, we talked about South Carruthers doing just instead of divided two-lane.
Yeah, I wanted to
All
clarify
right,
that with you.
that's something that,
We need to
That-
Now that we
That's not
have-
what these numbers are, though.
no.
This is
Now-
the full
now that we
project.
have you-
And that's
Now
not-
that we have your prioritization, we need to decide how you want to look at that one. As far as the top 10, that one in the McEwen Phase 4
that too.
are the two that we need to look at of how we want to go back and look at phasing
Yeah.
and look at the cost for the various phases that we think we need to do. But until we started getting some prioritization, we need to know what it is we need to look at. We don't need to look at all of them in that regard at this point, or at least that's our thinking. And there's so many options of phasing,
Yeah.
even for each project, but,
Well, we talked
and to
about-
go forward on the South Carruthers, if you don't mind. To go forward on the South Carruthers. Our thoughts are that we look at the phasing as the two-lane initial construction down to the connector road and including the connector road from existing, which is on the south side of Nickel Bend, is that I can't remember project.
South End,
All right.
Nichols Mill.
Next
No,
phasing
Nickel Bend.
Nickel
looking,
Bend, you're right, you're right.
next phasing looking at from that point south, crossing the river and tying in to where we can have a full connection to Long Lane. That does not mean taking South Carruthers all the way to Long Lane. It means using the agreement that we have in place with Ladd Park, that we do some work through their project to get the connection there. That would be like a phase 2. And then a phase 3, or whatever you want to call it, would be looking at getting it all the way to Long Lane as South Carruthers, and possibly some other improvements, maybe even, depending on timing, 4-laning some of it. So that's what I would recommend. We look at phasing now, then we can look at, as far as getting those numbers together, we can look at the funding capacity of the alternatives. Now, as far as phase 4 of McEwen, first thing we got to do, and it's going to be a year, probably, to get through the point of final design. We got to get the design done. So that's your what's listed, I think, is the 2012, somewhere close anyway. We may have to massage these numbers, because our consultants, for some reason, think over the last 3 or 4 years they should get a pay increase, and we had to pay for that. But anyway, so we'll look at that. But we'll look at the phasing of doing the 2-lane from, well, actually what we want to do is look at a phasing situation where we do some improvements at the roundabout, get that constructed up to a point where we can have some pretty good traffic flow, and then look at the full 2-laning from wherever that ends over to Wilson Pike. So, and remember, we're doing the intersection at Wilson Pike already, so that's some phasing opportunities that we can look at there. I do want to tell you, though, staff feels very strong that as we're doing the design of Phase 4, we need to be looking at doing the design for east of Wilson Pike. Do not forget, we have an agreement in place that could, and excuse me, but it could kick us in the butt if we don't get something going on design and get that finalized to where we're ready to go.
What number?
And that's,
What number is that?
that's the agreement with Brentwood as far as
The
getting that.
agreement's moved from the hard dates, which is a good
That's
thing,
right.
but it still can be triggered by
Developer
certain
driven,
development, so
50%.
having the design ready
Yeah.
would be a prudent step at this point.
But as
So let's-
developer-driven, plus we have to have 50% of the money before we're
Correct.
required to what? Before we're required to,
Do the project.
To go
Bid?
under construction.
or
Construct it within a
design?
certain period of
Oh.
time once the,
Once that happens, do
50%.
we know what the time period is, once we have developer-driven and 50%?
It's in the contract.
yeah, it's in the
just- I
contract, I
just
think it's
don't-
24 months or 18
Yeah,
months or
something like
something.
So we'd
that.
have
It's
to-
not
And
a-
we're talking about money from the developer, though.
Yeah.
It's 50% of the
Yes.
funding from the
But you're
developer.
saying, but you're
Now,
saying.
we're also, keep in mind, we're also looking initially at that only being a 2-lane.
Yeah,
So-
well, okay, here's the other thing. We really want to move ahead with Carruthers and McEwen 4. I say we need to go out, get the design done, do the right-of-way, and then build the 2 lanes on both of those roads. Leave the 4 lanes go to later, because people in my district, they want the road. They would rather have the 2 lanes as ASAP, rather than wait and wait and wait on those 4 lanes that are going to take forever, and it's very expensive. So we could cut back in that vein if we just do the 2 lanes, and honestly, I think that's what we need to do with Carruthers.
Okay.
Brothers too, yeah.
Yeah.
So in your scenarios that you're gonna bring back to us on whatever top number we suggest, right now, I think we're talking top 10 or?
I don't think we're looking at a top number. I think you're looking
Just go as far as you
An
can.
amount.
within the framework of the model
And let me,
that allows, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify what we're talking about on projects. On South Carruthers, would you want us to apply the Phase 1 that we had talked about, which is, we estimate somewhere in 3.5, I think.
It's 3.5 million, I believe.
3.5 million.
For what?
Phase
For that
1 of
phase
South
one.
Or
Carruthers.
for the 2 lanes?
Yeah, for that 2 lanes to,
South of
just
Nickel.
south of the
part
Nickel
South.
Bend
Yeah.
development.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm good with
Then McEwen, the administrative staff recommendation had been to, let's do design at this point,
that. Absolutely.
and then look at phasing beyond that for at a later
As
date.
soon as we can.
Do you want us to just do design in our numbers, or do you want us to look at something beyond design?
On McEwen,
On
what is your
McEwen.
thought?
You do.
With the 2 lanes, don't you?
Yeah, I want to look at the design, the right-of-way. I want numbers for design, estimates on the right-of-way,
We already
you
have.
know, and then on the construction. I mean, what we think it will be.
Construction of 2
And
lanes.
we need to get busy and move ahead and start the design ASAP. Need to commit funds to the design. But I want to get
Well,
numbers.
those costs are largely included in what you have in front of
Is
you.
it?
It's a matter of, what our point had been is, let's design it
But
so
isn't
that
it-
we can look at phasing.
Yeah, but isn't 17 million the total? That includes 4 lanes.
Yes.
I'm talking 2.
But as far as saying 2 lanes is half of that, until we get design, until we get design, we really need design to be able to
Well, you
say
have to do
a
the
good
design
cost of what
first.
Exactly, so we need to move
You've
ahead.
got to do the
Yeah.
design
Right,
first, then
absolutely.
do that, and then the next step, and the next, and the next.
Let's design right away.
I mean, we can put an estimate of what 2 lanes would be,
Yeah,
but it probably will not be as accurate as we can do like a full 4 lane because of what we have to do to do. So
May I make one
We need to
comment?
get the right away.
Yes.
You're just talking about 3.5 million for South Carruthers? That is what we are planning to pay for 3rd Avenue North, which is 1/4 of a mile. Now
Yeah.
stop to think,
Good point.
what's the relative improvement there? I mean, really, in fact, in here it says 5 million. if we're talking about $3.5 million for South Carruthers, we could do that for what we're planning to spend on 3rd Avenue North Extension.
Well, the projects are not apples to apples.
No, they're not.
Different things that are included in 3rd Avenue that would not be included in South Carruthers.
And at this point, 3rd Avenue North is looked at as a funded, approved project.
Wait just a minute. If you, remember that I asked you before, it is not funded until the board approves the contract for it, is that right?
For the purposes of CIP prioritization, it is a funded project.
Right.
I just want to be clear on that, because if you want to change that, you need to make a motion and have the board pull it out of the funding plan, because it's in the funding plan now. That's why we didn't prioritize it, that's not why we did that. I just want to be clear, because it gets brought up a lot, but it's in the funding plan. And so, if you want to take action on that, please do, because we're planning on doing that project and moving forward with that project. We took action on it tonight in the committee meeting about advancing it forward and doing some of the appraisal work we need to do on a related component of that project. So I just want to be clear so everybody understands. It is in the funding plan, so it's not part of the priority discussion tonight unless you want to revisit your previously approved funding plan.
I want to say something about that, because whenever I was looking at some other zoning things, I was looking at Metro zoning ordinance, and apparently last year or 2 years ago, they passed legislation deauthorizing all the projects that they had previously authorized, because they said, we cannot afford the debt. We cannot afford the debt that this will cause. I'm not advocating that we do that, but I want to say, 15 miles up the road, they did the very thing that you're talking about. They said, we cannot do the things that we were talking about before 2 years ago. And so I'm just saying that other people have done exactly the thing that you're talking about.
That's absolutely, you're right to do it. I just want to make sure, for the purposes of the prioritization discussion, that's not a project that we're looking at, because you've given us direction on it. If you want to change that direction, you need to tell us, because we're spending staff time and effort to deliver on the projects you told us to do.
And if you change
ago.
that, you are completely redoing the whole transportation pattern of downtown, because that is to carry the traffic from 96 to Hillsborough Road without any problems, to get it off of Bridge Street, and that is going to take it right into Hillsborough Road. It's going to take the traffic right through town, and you would be messing up the whole Hillsborough Road project if you did that.
May I make a comment about that?
Yeah.
I do not believe that anybody that has the option to go on Matt Catcher from over in that area to 96 is going to go through, I don't know how many traffic signals you have to go through to go across to 96 and then up to 65.
Well, let me tell you, living there, they do.
Well,
many hundreds of people every day go through, come down right through town, go right down Bridge Street, and go to Hillsborough Road. I live with it every day and night, and I know that happens.
Well, I want to say, whenever I make that trip around to where I was working, I guarantee you, I do not go through downtown if I can help it. In fact,
you're one of the few.
But let me say to you, if you look and you see how the people come through there, you think about how many traffic signals they have to go through there.
They love it.
How would you go?
It's a scenic historic route,
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing. The will of the board has been spoken on, as the administrator so eloquently quoted. So if there's any changes to what is currently in the flow, we need to take it to the board for a vote. So at this time, I would encourage that we move forward with our discussion on the CIP and how we want to proceed.
Could I make one more comment? Am I the only person that's concerned that our bonded debt is 6 times what it was 10 years ago? I mean, I'm just asking the question. Am I the only person that's concerned that our bonded debt is, in fact, it's more than that, because we now have another 16 million in there. We have another 16 million that we've already borrowed that doesn't show up on this.
Go ahead.
Mayor,
You're wound up.
Go ahead.
I can tell.
I just like.
No, I'm not wound up.
Yeah,
I mean,
since what's coming up is coming up, you go ahead and address it, and then we'll just go around the
I
table.
think I probably said what I wanted to say earlier. We have incurred more debt. We've taken great advantage of some great opportunities. We've got a lot to show for what the debt is right now. We have a plan to fund our debt. We have excellent policies to guide us. And I think that the citizens of Franklin are proud of a lot of the things that have happened. And we will continue to watch our indebtedness. That's why we went through all the process of developing all the policies we have. They're guidelines for us. And that's why we have a PFM and financial advisors is to guide us through this. But we're a growing community, and if we stop what we're doing, we're going to be in real trouble down the road if we don't continue to plan for the McEwen 4s and the McEwen 5s and the South Carruthers. So debt happens to be something nobody likes, but it's something that we need right now to keep up with the growth, and we have a plan to pay for it.
Well, I don't think we're 6 times as big as we were 10 years ago.
Mr. Skinner?
My concern is that, we were blessed with a huge general fund balance. And now with the recession, nobody can really predict when we're going to return to having any additional money to put back in the balance fund. We may have to go for years and years, and we're using little bits at a time. That's probably smart because we're not getting that much money for having it. But nobody can tell us when we're going to return to when we'll have a surplus that we actually generate in that year again. That's what concerns me, that this period may, and it won't, probably none of us here will still be here when this might come up to be a problem. But I'm just real cautious because we don't have good history of good information to make predictions on how this financial situation is going to come out now. So that's why I'm just extra cautious. It's not for us. It's probably not for the next BOMA, but perhaps the next one. And without being able to know when we're going to return to a surplus budget, we need to be cautious.
Well, that's the reason we have the models, and that's the reason we make as educated a projection as we can make to be in a position where we are. I'm just sitting here wondering what would be the scenario if we just dropped everything there and said, we've got $122 million of debt and we're not going to build another road, we're not going to do anything else. I simply cannot imagine that as being an answer for $2,175 per capita debt versus $459 in 2001. We have an obligation to do the best job that we can to plan, to build, to provide the projects that the citizens of Franklin expect us to provide. I've gone back several times and I've said that in the years, and maybe we shouldn't even say this, but in the years 2004 and 5 and 6 and part of 7, I don't know that you could find a sewer project or a road project that was done during those 4 years that was not already planned or thought out prior to those 4 years. And I think what we've done now in the last 3 years, or almost 4, has been a tremendous turnaround from that particular philosophy and that particular way of what we've done. We've done sewer projects, we've done road projects, we've got them on the books, we've got corrections to a water problem that was never corrected, we've got liners in reservoirs, we've done things that are beneficial to all the citizens of Franklin, and I simply can't imagine the thought process of going back and really dropping all these and doing nothing on these projects that we've got going. I still think, as the mayor's pointed out, I still think you've got a capacity model. I think you take the first 3, if you get the first 4, if you get the first 5 in it. I think what you need from us is the prioritization within the projects themselves. I've said numerous times, I think McEwen, I think South Carruthers, I think Mac Hatcher, I think Hillsborough Road, those, and 2 of those are not on here anyway, but those are the 4 major road projects we've got to do. If we phase them, I think you can phase those, but I think those are important. I don't believe, and pardon me, certainly don't want to step on anyone's toes, but to say that we don't have cars on South Carruthers, we would if we had it. And it's not necessarily because of the development that you've mentioned. They're there. They're sitting right there on I-65, dead stop.
Exactly.
Come to a dead stop. And they'll be there on South Carruthers if you had that road from all the way from Brentwood city limits all the way down through there, if we had the road built. And they are people who live here now. They may be people who live in Spring Hill, they may be people who live in Thompson Station, but they affect the people in the citizens of Franklin when we're traveling up and down, because I don't get on I-65 because you ain't go up and down through there. So if I wanted to go someplace, I've got to go a different route from I-65 southbound in the afternoons then. But I like the direction we're going in. I'm disappointed that we've got that much debt as anyone else is. I don't think there's anyone any more disappointed than I am. It may be, but I doubt it. But we've got to plan, and we've got to use the best judgment tools that we've got. And Mike, I agree with you. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but no one else does either. And you have no way of knowing. You just do the best shot you can do, and the best tools you've got, and the best judgment plans that you've got. Next.
I'd like to make one more comment, and that has to do with during these times of financial distress that we've had, the city has knuckled under, cut back, and done a remarkable job of continuing to provide services and continuing to maintain our employment. And so I'm very pleased with the management that's going on right now. I think, and we need to continue to work the plan, as Clyde has said. I think he said it very eloquently. We may have to get you a clergy. You're so eloquent tonight, Clyde.
He is our designated clergy.
Mr. Chairman, if I could have a little conversation on Beasley Court from maybe Parker. What was your thought when you selected that? What can we do with that?
Beasley Court, Century Court Beasley Drive connector, that comes to the forefront in staff's perspective because of the safety issues that we have in the general area. We've got, of course, Beasley trying to get out on Columbia Avenue that is standstill traffic at
There was a wreck again yesterday afternoon.
And we're trying to get a connector that can get that traffic over to a signalized intersection. We're not going to get a signal at Beasley. So that's the thought there is, and that's our job, is to look, number one, at safety concerns for the general public. So that's what brings it to the forefront for us. Relatively inexpensive. Of course, I'd like to get that salary, but I mean, you know, it's as far as projects go, it's.
That's what I was going to do with my bulldogs.
Yeah.
We've actually been a little concerned that
we're going to let you get the dam on the Harper River.
Yeah.
you may
She's
have
taking that
$900,000.
to a building if we gave you a bulldozer, so we're kind of concerned with that liability situation. Again, safety, see, we're bringing safety to it.
Well, great, because that was my thought too. That was one of my top, actually one of my top 3. So I'm glad to see that it made that, and I would encourage us to continue to look at scenarios with that.
Do y'all kind of understand, I'm assuming, where if you phase McEwen and if you phase South Carruthers, and as with the model that you've got, the direction in which we're kind of looking at going, because I'm not sure that we don't know the dollar values of those projects if you phase South Carruthers out of the 17 million.
We will put a dollar amount. I just want to
those
make
on
sure
there. Yeah.
that we
Let's
are
do
able, that I caution you that dollar amount, when we start looking, especially projects like, South Carruthers is not that big of a problem to do because we've had input from our developer of things.
And we've done the design.
Yeah,
And we've
which
done
is
the
good.
design, that's right.
That's a big,
Phase 4 is a little more problematic because, and it's a rougher
yeah. Oh,
terrain
the
and all
terrain's
anyway,
horrible.
so
Yeah.
that's a little more problematic. But I just want to make sure that I'm able to caution you that we may plug in a number and it not end up being real close. We'll be as close as we can get. We'll do the best estimate we can.
We know that.
But, I'm just concerned when we start doing something like that. Because keep in mind, build 2 lanes, we still got to do most of, if not all the blasting, and it's going to be blasting.
Oh, yeah, over there it's going to be
Ms.
blasted.
Berger.
Oh, I
You're going to
know.
have your
I'm
constituents.
buying earplugs and earmuffs for all the
But
residents.
we've got to
over
do
there.
most of that, if not all of it. We've got to do a lot of the
Big pad.
grading because it is deep cuts, et cetera. So that's
Maybe we'll be
my
buying
main problem. But we will be looking at numbers, and I think Mr. Truill has, with PFM, got it set up to where it's easy, once you have the number for the scenario you want to do, it's relatively easy to plug in and get run. So, but we'll get numbers together and give it to him.
What I hear the charge to be is for us to run through the funding model as best we can through the priorities, kind of as you've given them to us here, and come back with something that is sort of a working model and maybe a few scenarios that we try to look at. I'd like to, if the board's okay with it, also run as a scenario the recommendation administrative staff had made, which is components of some of the projects and that sort of that package along with these priorities. Because, like I said, some of ours were maybe projects that have bigger price tags completely, but we took a component so we could take a next step, that sort of thing. So it just might be a point of comparison if we could do that along with kind of taking the priorities a piece by piece as far as we can with the capacity model.
Are you saying about running the numbers for the top 5 projects, or what?
What I heard is run as many as we can until the numbers start to look, out of whack in terms of what our policies are. So I don't know what that is until we do it, and some of it depends on how we determine and what estimates we make about phasing, and maybe we just do design, or maybe we do a design and some version of a phase 1 on something like McEwen 4.
I think we have to include the first 3, of course. I definitely would like to see the first 5 included, if we can do that. And we need to break those down. We need to break that down in Carruthers and McEwen, like we talked about, to the 2 lanes. Getting the right-of-way for all of it, and then constructing the 2 lanes. And then, David, you said something about the McEwen east of Wilson. Maybe we have to look at the design for that. You might have to bring us something on that, so at least we would know what
We're doing
what you're talking about there.
staff scenario, that
We'll have that.
Yeah, okay. You know, what Clyde said, I think we just have to go ahead and start looking at these things and bring that back to us. And, as you said, both of you said that, Mike too, y'all said, we don't know what's out there, what's going to be down the road. And we have an election year coming up, and it doesn't matter what your policies and politics are, it doesn't matter. We just know that on a federal level, and we've been fairly blessed here in Tennessee, we're still hanging in there, we're doing fairly well, and we're still attracting, I was talking to our economic development guy today, we've got some companies, serious companies, and people looking here, and the activity is still there. And thank God, because it doesn't seem like it's going away, that we do have some opportunities coming online possibly, and if those happen, that's going to be a really good thing. But, you know, I think the next 12 months, we're probably just going to be sitting tight and find out what next fall brings, because, you know, a lot of businesses have been holding back because they haven't felt they don't know what's down the road, and they're not taking risks. They're holding back, like we all know. And so I think in the next year's timing, next fall, we'll probably find out what's going to happen a little bit better. But until then, I think we have to move. We have to move ahead. We can't stand still, because when things start happening, and if they don't, we pull back and we don't do as many projects.
I'm going to answer.
Well, I have one more thing that I want to say. I do appreciate the fact that in the last 3 years, our budget has gone from $60 million in the general fund down to, what, 52 we're proposing for this next year. My concern is that that $60,000 budget that was, you know, that was passed 3 years ago was 60 million, sorry, 60 million that was passed was, you know, in the bubble. I mean, it was not reality then. As soon as it was passed, then we saw that we had to make changes. And Eric, whenever you came in, one of the first things we did was to cut back on some of those things. My concern is that the projections for our CIP were made in that same atmosphere, and they have not been cut back. I think we're looking at a little bit of that as we're talking about doing some scenarios that are less expensive. But very honestly, there for a while, we had quite a number of projects, some of which continued to be completed, that were really just thinking that we would have all the money in the world. And we've had some like that. And as I say, my concern is that our CIP that we passed, you know, the agreement on was back in that time when we were getting 10% increase in sales tax every year. And you know, from highs that we haven't approached since then. But it's not just that. It's not just the sales tax. It's all of our development fees. And as I say, my concern is that unlike our yearly budget, which I think we did a wonderful job on, and cut to include things that were necessary, has not carried over to the CIP. And that we're thinking now, you know, we can do anything. We can have the top of everything, the most expensive of everything, and I do not believe that is reality for at least the next 10 years.
The board did a great job on policy work about two and a half years ago that relate to this very issue. And when you did your capital plan a year and a half ago, it was based on those policies. 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Whatever it was, it was not done. I would say, I would not characterize that being done out of touch with reality, because we put those priorities against those policies, both reserve and debt policies, and asked the question, what can we afford? Now, there might be varying answers about what that is, but I think you're asking the right questions, and you provided yourself with an excellent policy framework to look at this funding question, which is not an easy one. And it's such a good policy that the comptroller's picked up on elements of the policy you used and is spreading it throughout the state in terms of the expectations that are placed on local governments to do good capital and debt planning. So you're at the forefront of that. You've done it right, and you did the right thing in that you had the policy discussion and set the policies framework outside of the desire to complete project A, B, and C. You did it saying what's reasonable to expect us to afford, what puts us in good financial footing, what helps us maintain a AAA, what do the financial markets look at when they assess a credit and the viability of an organization like the City of Franklin. And so I would compliment you on the work you did and continue to use that tool to help make the judgments. Not everybody may reach the same conclusion in those judgments, but it gives you a very good framework and measuring stick for where we're at. And we do work very hard to try to match up the wish list and the priorities against a financial reality. And we're going to continue to do that from a staff and a board standpoint as we work together.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Proper motion, is there a second? Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
I just knew that, but it wasn't.